GLM 5.2 scored 62.1 on SWE Bench Pro, tops every open weight model out there, and OpenCode is completely free. That gap decides your whole coding stack. Both just dropped and the dev community is already picking sides, so I'm running GLM 5.2 versus OpenCode across 5 head-to-head tests to find out who actually wins. And the twist is, these two aren't really direct competitors, which changes everything about which one you should actually pay for. My name is Brian, and I'm in these tools 12 hours a day, so you don't have to be. Every number here is traced back to official pricing pages, model cards, and independent benchmark runs. If you're running coding agents at scale, even small token cost differences add up to real money across thousands of requests. Alright, test 1 is cost. A solo dev running 100,000 tokens a day on GLM 5.2 at $1.40 per million input is spending pennies. But pick the wrong plan or the wrong provider and that same workload can cost you 10 times more. And that's the kind of bill that shows up before you notice it. So what I found here is pretty interesting. OpenCode is free, full stop. You bring your own API key, you pay for the model, and OpenCode itself charges you nothing. GLM 5.2 runs 1.40 per million input tokens on ZAI, or as low as 0.95 per million on Deep Infra, and the coding plan tiers go $3 to $160 a month, which are community-reported numbers, so I take those with a grain of salt. OpenCode takes cost, and it's not subtle. GLM 5.2's token rates are genuinely low, but a free harness beats cheap tokens every time. You literally pay 0 for OpenCode itself, so GLM 5.2, 0, OpenCode 1. Okay, test 2 is coding benchmark performance, a real-world number to anchor this. In a community test, one setup solved 24 out of 25 tasks, and the other solved 19 out of 25 on the same endpoint. And that's 5 tasks you just don't get done. If your agent is failing on roughly 1 in 5 coding jobs, that's not a minor quality gap. That's a workflow you can't actually trust. What surprised me when I looked at the benchmark numbers is how one-sided this is. GLM 5.2 hits 62.1 on SWE Bench Pro, which leads all open weight models, and 81.0 on Terminal Bench 2.1. OpenCode has no model-level benchmark score at all because it's a harness, not a model. So bear in mind that's an apples-to-harness comparison. But on raw coding power, there's only one side with actual numbers. GLM 5.2 takes coding benchmarks, and the reason is simple. It's the only one with a score. OpenCode is purely a harness, so there's nothing to compare on the model side, and GLM 5.2 is the engine here. That ties things up 1-to-1. Test 3 is speed. A developer waiting 5 minutes for a single reply from their coding agent isn't just annoyed. They've broken their focus, lost their flow state, and probably written the fix themselves. And one community report flagged exactly that, with OpenCode. Speed isn't a nice to have when you're literally hammering a tool through dozens of iterations a day. What I found here is pretty clear. GLM 5.2 runs at 157.5 tokens per second median across providers, and the fast variant hits 612 tokens per second on Vercel's ZDR gateway. OpenCode speed depends entirely on whatever model you connect to it, and one community report flagged 5-minute reply delays, which is a single source, so I wouldn't treat it as a hard rule, but it's worth knowing. GLM 5.2 takes speed because it has actual numbers, and OpenCode doesn't. The harness has no baseline figure because speed is totally model dependent, which makes it impossible to score, and GLM 5.2's 157.5 tokens per second median is a real, consistent number. That puts GLM 5.2 ahead 2-to-1. Okay, so GLM 5.2 is ahead right now, but the context window and deployment tests are still coming. And the deployment test is where OpenCode's flexibility could change the whole picture for you. If you care about running local models or keeping your code off someone else's server, you want to stick around for that one. Now, test 4 is context and output limits. 1 million tokens. That's the number GLM 5.2 is working with. And if your codebase is large enough that a smaller context window starts dropping files or losing earlier instructions, you end up re-explaining things over and over, which burns tokens and breaks the agent's reasoning. That's basically how much of your project the model can actually see at once, and that number matters a lot at scale. I looked at the spec sheets and community reports here, and GLM 5.2 is sitting at a 1 million token context window with a max output of 131,072 tokens per response, which is 5 times the effective window of the 5.1 family. OpenCode's context is whatever the model you connect provides, so it's model dependent, which means you can't give it a fixed number. GLM 5.2 wins context and output limits because a fixed class-leading 1 million tokens beats a number that depends on something else. I couldn't find a documented upper bound for OpenCode anywhere, and GLM 5.2's 131K output per response is the concrete number here. That makes it 3-to-1, GLM 5.2. Alright, test 5 is deployment and modality, and this one's a little different. If your company has a policy that no source code leaves your machine, or you want to swap models without rebuilding your whole setup, the tool that locks you into one runtime is going to be a problem fast. Flexibility and privacy aren't just nice features, they're blockers when your setup doesn't have them. What I found is that both tools are genuinely open. GLM 5.2 is MIT licensed open weight, so you can self-host it, and OpenCode is open source with over 160,000 GitHub stars, running in your terminal as an IDE extension or as a desktop app. The one edge OpenCode has is privacy. It stores none of your code, while GLM 5.2's privacy depends on which hosting provider you use. So the gap here is pretty small. Both tools are open and both are self-hostable. OpenCode has more interface options and a clear privacy edge, but GLM 5.2 is MIT licensed, which is as open as it gets for a model. Which one wins really comes down to whether you care more about interface variety or raw model access, and that's kind of a personal call. This one's a tie. Both are open, both are flexible, and OpenCode's interface variety is real, but GLM 5.2's MIT license and self-hosting option match it closely enough that I can't call a winner. Final score, GLM 5.2 3, OpenCode 1 tied. Okay, so here's where GLM 5.2 clearly wins. It tops every open weight model on SWE Bench Pro at 62.1 and Terminal Bench 2.1 at 81.0. It has a 1 million token context window, that's 5 times the 5.1 family. It runs at 157.5 tokens per second median, up to 612 TPS on the fast variant, and the cheapest token rate is 0.95 per million data input on deep infra. And here's where OpenCode clearly wins. It's free, full stop, BYOK, with no markup on model requests. It works with any model from over 75 providers, including local models. It runs in your terminal, IDE, and desktop app. And it stores none of your code, so privacy is built in by design. So here's the call. GLM 5.2 scored 62.1 on SWE Bench Pro, and it's the best open-weight coding engine you can get right now. So if you need raw coding power and a 1 million token context window, GLM 5.2 is your pick. If you want a free harness that works with any model and keeps your code off other people's servers, OpenCode wins. And I think the best setup is both. Run GLM 5.2 inside OpenCode. And if you want to see how a free local setup actually holds up against a paid one, I ran that exact test in my video on Ollama versus Claude Code, where I checked whether a free local stack can actually keep up. That one answers a question a lot of you are probably sitting on right now, so it's worth a watch.